Hello, and welcome to the Sleon Productions podcast, where we interview entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, innovators, and small business owners. Get to know how they started their business, how they started, how they been through the trials while running it, and also their future plans. And joining me is a friend of mine that I've known since college, actually, and we started doing the sports cast together every week during the NFL season, especially. Dan Madden, he is the owner of Stark Memorial, a funeral home based in Salem, Ohio. Mr. Madden, welcome to the Sleon Productions podcast.
Yeah, it's good to be here talking business. We're usually talking about my Browns, so hopefully they take care of business this fall. But good to talk about the funeral business today.
Yeah, looking good. We were talking about sports before the show, so that gets a little bit more comfortable for this show. So, Mr. Madden, we actually met at Regent University in Virginia Beach, and I do remember that we had a conversation, and I think you were talking about, or you were building a business strategy or a business plan to start a funeral home. Was that the case back then? Just to clarify.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always been my dream to own a funeral home. I had some business plans to start my own from scratch. And it's difficult to do in the funeral profession to start a business from scratch because a lot of this business is, where your family has always gone. That's where the family takes them for funeral services. So the new guy coming in, it's hard to start from scratch. Shifted gears and actually bought an established business in my market here in Salem. So I switched gears a little bit, but it was always my dreams to have a funeral home.
And that's something that, staying put, staying that vision could start from a young age, could start older. You'd be like Colonel Sanders that did it till 62 years old, created a chicken recipe, and then the rest is history. But what inspired you to enter this funeral service profession?
Yeah, so when I was going to Youngstown State, a little out after high school, I was actually my senior year of high school. I was going to go to Youngstown State. My grandma died. She was at a local funeral home. I was curious about the behind the scenes of the funeral business and how all that worked. And so my grandfather got me a job at the funeral home where she had her funeral, and I started working calling hours and helping with services and was a little skittish at first. I remember running the vacuum after calling hours and just, oh man, there's a body right there. Got kind of freaked out. But I just stuck with it. I decided to go to Cincinnati Mortuary School and been doing funeral business for 25 years now. It's crazy how all that worked out. That something bad, I always tell the story, in my grandmother's death turned into ultimately something good, and me helping people at a very difficult time, serving people, and ultimately fulfilling my dream to own a funeral home. So crazy, like they talk about Romans 28, God works all things for good for those that are called in court his purpose, and ultimately even in death.
Yeah, no, exactly. And fulfilling that purpose, we'll have a calling. And, I actually heard another podcast I was listening to that the top, successful businesses, entrepreneurs, the podcast was saying the host of the podcast was saying that these guys believe it was their calling to start this. Like it was their life mission. It felt like, wow, there's like a very biblical vibe to it. It's interesting. And like the funeral industry, I don't meet too many people that want to start funeral homes. That is, I mean, you're the first and the only
Yeah.
one that I know as of right now, unless I know a buddy
Yeah.
that did one and he never told me. But how often do you meet these type of funeral home like entrepreneurs? Like, would you say that they're rare
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, it's definitely rare to come in contact with one. I mean, of course, in my circle, I network with a lot of them at conventions. There's actually a national funeral directors convention that I try to go to every year. So you're talking to people in the business, but just an average person, you might not come in contact with one. There's a big demand for people becoming a funeral director. When you look at funeral homes, there's a ton of funeral homes in the United States. And a lot of the funeral homes are getting older, and they're looking for people to take them over. Sometimes the family doesn't want to go into it, so they're selling to bigger conglomerates. They are selling to private equity firms. I mean, it's just kind of crazy that other businesses that I talk to, private equity is kind of taking over. And it's happening in funeral service, where private equity is buying up funeral homes all across the country. It happened in my market in Youngstown area a year or so ago, 2 years ago. So it's hard for someone like me that wants to live an American entrepreneurial dream to go in and buy a funeral home, because they either get bought out by a conglomerate or the family takes it over. So I really pushed. I worked on the current owner for about 4 years, and purchased it in 2019. And then my first full year in business, COVID hit. And you want to talk about having to adapt on the fly when COVID. People didn't think of funeral directors. We were the last responders, and we were having to deal with all that. And my wife was pregnant with our first child. I really didn't know how to handle it, and it was difficult. But we ended up adapting with technology and doing Zoom and YouTube funerals with 12 people in attendance. So it was a challenge to get through it that first full year, but we've been growing ever since.
Let's go back and rewind a bit. You said 2019 you purchased your first funeral home. Tell us about that process. Maybe someone that's listening to this, like, well, I want to do what you're doing, Dan. Tell us how did it be? Did you get a loan? Did you get some money? Did you get some investors?
Yep.
What was the whole process like?
Yeah, it is a process. I mean, ultimately, the best way to do it is to try to get the owner to owner finance. It's kind of the best, for the owner to not have that big tax burden right out of the gate. Uncle Sam's going to take a lot of that money. But that wasn't my case. So I risked everything, spent my whole life savings. And then it's hard. I got rejected by several local banks that just didn't want to loan me the money. Someone that doesn't have experience of owning a business. With the funeral business, there's a lot of goodwill. These banks are only going to give you 75% of the real estate. You're buying the name, you're buying the business books, but that's goodwill. There's a lot of blue sky, and the banks don't like that. I tried to give them the numbers. Hey, I've got experience. They wouldn't talk to me. So I had to get an SBA loan. That's probably the best loan to get for someone starting out. There's a Live Oak Bank. It's probably a well-known funeral a loan company out of North Carolina. They understand the funeral business, and they loan me the money. And so that's probably, if you're just getting into it, you're probably going to have to go the SBA route. Because local banks don't want to take a risk on it.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of my other friends have done, getting SBA, especially during COVID, which you brought that up.
Oh
That
yeah,
was a
yeah,
lot of money being handed out, just like that. Um, what is a typical day like to run a funeral home?
yeah. So, day in the life of having a funeral home. I mean, that changes this profession. We can't predict death. So you can have, a free day, and, three people might die overnight. And so you're having a schedule with families, doing embalmings. But I have a great staff here. So, I'll meet with families, help with funerals, but I do a lot of the behind the scenes things now. Making sure everything's taken care of. I do a lot with marketing, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, with social media. I do a lot of that. Just kind of more of an operational. I'm also a dad, and so that is my priority, my family. One thing, when I purchased the funeral home, I wasn't going to be this director that lives and dies here as an owner. A lot of them are, they miss birthdays, Christmases of their kids, and I don't do that. And that's why I have a great staff that can oversee things when I'm at home with my family. But there's really no formal day, but I'm just kind of operational behind the scenes, and a coordination of making sure everything gets done. Because there is no do-overs in funerals, so you got to make sure everything's done correctly. There could be a time where we're seeing 10, 15 families at a time. So that's a lot to keep in your mind and make sure everything goes smoothly.
I remember a couple years ago when my grandma died, the funeral home, I think they liked an AV guy, and I'm an AV guy. You probably know that. I'm very production technical, so I had to help them out, and it's important to have staff. You gotta have make sure you get every loose end tied, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with the, we're only successful with the staff that we have around us. I can only do so much. So I have to trust the people that I have to do it. And, it's hard at times because I'm a perfectionist. I like everything perfect. So it's hard to kind of step back and be like, okay, I need to trust the people I have and not is micromanage as much. It's hard to do because I want it done my way, and it's a struggle.
Trust but verify,
Yeah, that's right.
like Ronald
That's
Reagan
right.
said. Um, you're a new guy. You're saying that a lot of these funeral homes are operated by seniors, older people. What technologies have you brought into this funeral home situation? Is there some innovative things you've seen? Obviously, like you go to conferences, and what have things have you seen changes? And maybe like the order of service, or maybe things how things are operated. Maybe AI is involved, but you tell us a
Yeah,
little bit what you've seen
right.
lately.
Yeah. So when I set out in my business plan when I was going to take over this funeral home, one thing I wanted to bring to the table was high tech, because the previous owner um, didn't really do that. I mean, he was in his 90s. So really getting a good website was key. Also getting a Google business page up and running, really hitting hard the Google reviews. I mean, when I took over, we had 9 Google reviews. Now we have 273 in
That'll
5
help.
years.
That's good.
Because people look at Google now when they're trying to decide where they're going to go. And we really reached out to families and asked them to tell us about the experience. We started text messaging families. We have a company that does aftercare by text to where they follow up with every family. How did things go? Give them grief resources through this app. And they actually communicate with families, and they ask for a review. And people just love that. We just don't take their money and forget about them. We actually follow up with them throughout the course of the year, sending them a birthday, anniversary text, a death anniversary text, and really keeping that communication going. And then an active social media presence. We got a YouTube page. We've got a Facebook. And I really hit hard on Facebook. I mean, most funeral homes didn't even have a Facebook page. And if they did, all they posted was a holiday generic cookie cutter things. And if you follow Stark Memorial on Facebook, you'll see a reel once or twice a day talking about funeral service and new products. And I'm relatable with people to when they come in, they know me from Facebook because they see me. People reach out to us on Facebook all the time for pre-planning or, hey, I love what you're doing. So really, all those things factored in to growing the business in 5 years, and new innovative things. We started offering parting stone. We were part of the 70 funeral homes in the country that you can actually make ashes in the stones. So things that you might be out of the box, like you wouldn't think of, and it's really taken off. Just trying to be an innovative. We added an on-site crematory with 60% of the people in our market being cremated. It was important to know that their loved one was in our care at all times. And I don't know, that's important to people because I don't know. Have you heard about the Mortician series on HBO? The funeral service has kind of gotten a bad light here in the last year. Have you seen or heard about that?
I have not. HBO is
Yeah,
above my pay grade.
yeah.
So.
I don't, it's really, I see it on social media that this funeral home owner really wasn't cremating people. He's cremating people, multiple people together, and it was just
Oh,
bad,
wow,
terrible.
that's bad PR.
He went to jail and everything, but people have concerns because, okay, this happened here, but we have an open door policy at our crematory that you can come in anytime and see what we're doing. We have accountability, tracking system. So putting that crematory in was important because we didn't want to trust somebody else to do their job. We have full reins to oversee that whole operation now.
That's incredible. You mentioned social media. Recently, you started TikTok this past year, and I heard the skyrocket is. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was real hesitant with TikTok. I was in and out of it, but I just decided to do it. It's kind of a hobby. I enjoy it. It's a little different demographic. A lot of funeral professionals, people are interested. There's several that have like 1 million followers. People are interested in behind the scenes of the funeral business. A lot of questions because it's something that you don't think about, and people are curious about it. I'm finding that out, particularly on TikTok. So I joined here a few months ago. I've got a couple videos with 30,000 views, and a lot of engagement. Almost 3,000 followers now. Not much, but we're tracking. But it's just nice to communicate with people, and it's nice to see people are curious about the funeral business, and it's just more or less to reach a younger demographic, and also to educate people and create awareness for the funeral business. A lot of people reach out that they're interested in going to mortuary school. So if I can help people to steer them that direction for the future, that's the way to do it.
What's the number one question you get on these social media channels? Not, I mean, it could be a person that's interested in buying a funeral home, or a person that's interested in that niche. Say, okay, what happens with this dead
Yeah.
person? What's like the most common question you hear?
Yeah, so there's a lot of question about embalming. I'm finding that the videos I do about embalming and behind the scenes in the embalming room take off. People want to know, do you have to be, everyone have to be embalmed? How long does embalming last? Things like
Can you explain
that.
what that
How
is? Because
soon do you embalm? Yeah,
yeah.
so embalming is basically temporary preservation of a deceased to where you're going to have an open casket to the public. The funeral home, you would do embalming, where you're preserving to prevent decomposition, give the person more of a natural appearance for the viewing.
Right.
So that would be the embalming process that we would have to do. So a lot of interest on that. That most of the questions are geared towards the embalming process for sure.
That's quite interesting. Yeah, when my grandma had a viewing, her face, like, yeah, she was there, but she looked different. It was,
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I the whole process of embalming that probably can't happen. Quite interesting. Now, on average, for each town or city, how many funeral homes are per town or city that you know of?
Yeah, so
Average.
there's an overpopulation of funeral homes. I mean, in our town, I mean, we have four. But in a bigger town, I mean, there seems to be one on every corner, along with churches. So I think
I didn't
that's
know
going to
that.
change here in the future, because these small mom and pop, maybe that do 50 a year or something like that, with cremation going up. It's going to be hard to make those margins. It's going to be a volume game. So I think you're going to see in the next 5 years a lot of consolidation, a lot of just closing, particularly if the kids aren't coming into it. So I think that's going to change here in the next 5 years, because the business is changing drastically with cremation.
That's quite something. It feels like the past friends and family that I know of, majority have done cremations. Is had like the rate you've seen rather than
Yeah.
just burying them
Yeah.
outside?
Yeah, so like I said, we're at about 65%. It's projected, I think, by 2035 to be like 80% cremation. Other parts of the country are already there. There's many different reasons for that. Number one, it's less expensive to
Yeah.
be cremated. Number two is people aren't as religious as they once were. So when you think of a funeral per se, you think of having a pastor come in or going to a church to do a funeral.
Right.
So people are like, well, why don't we just do a cremation? But what we try to do at Stark Memorial, if you don't want a pastor or service, we encourage you, if you're going to be cremated, to have some type of service, just for closure, to have that time for everyone to gather. Because we find if there wasn't a service, you end up having 20 mini funerals within a few months, because you run to people in the supermarket or out and about. Hey, sorry about your dad. Sorry about your mom. And this way you can have something, everyone could grieve at once, and you don't have to have a clergy. I'm actually a certified celebrant, to where we can personalize things, make it more of a celebration of life. If you don't want scriptures, that's fine. We can personalize it, and make it. We do catering on site now, where you can have a reception with food and drinks, and just have a time and sharing. We always try to personalize things. That's another thing that we specialize in. Just no cookie cutters. My motto is cookie cutters are for cookies, not for funerals. And we actually put out a putting green at a grave site service. Ohio State helmet, Browns helmet. The person was owned a bunch of Taco Bells, so we had tacos delivered at the graveside for the family.
Oh,
Just things like
interesting.
that. It's like, it's not your average funeral. Just, you come in and say some prayers, Our Father and 23rd Psalm, and that's it. We try to make those special things to make it meaningful.
That's awesome, Dan. You had that extra touch, that
Yep.
layer. That will, that's great. How often do you get pre-planned? Like, look, I got
Yeah.
a old grandfather. He's 98. He's gonna probably pass away any moment or whatever. Do you see a lot of those, or it's kind of like, hey, Dan, my dad just passed away. I need something now, or like,
Yeah, no, we do a lot with pre-planning. I'm a big advocate for it. So we do these lunch and learn seminars every month at area restaurants, and we usually get a good turnout for those, maybe 15, 20 people. And it can be at all ages. The people in are healthy are coming in and doing it at 55 and 60. Every
oh,
funeral home is different, but we lock in the cost of our services and merchandise. So, maybe a $8,000-9,000 funeral today might be 15 when they die. I don't
you're
know where
right.
anywhere where with this market where you could get that investment. So there's payment plans available as well. You don't have to pay it all at once, and it just takes the burden off people's loved ones to
Your life
have
insurance
everything
can
done.
cover it, right? Too.
Yeah, if someone did have life insurance, they can assign it over to the funeral home ahead of time if they like. The only thing, we don't lock in the cost on those items.
Right.
Especially a life insurance, 90 days of a person's life, there might be a lot of medical expenses. There's a loss of income, especially a case of a husband and wife. So that life insurance could be used for those things, not maybe pay for an inflated funeral price whenever the person dies. So if people have the money to pay for it in advance, we encourage them to do that.
Yeah, that's something that I've heard the cost could go astronomical. Or if you talk to Dan, he could work. He could work out a deal. Which I didn't know that you could, plan years ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like 20 years ahead. Hey,
Yeah,
Dan, let's just do this now, and I don't want to have someone else pay for it or whatever.
exactly.
So that's quite something. Dan, working in this industry is tough. It's not easy. You've seen some changes in everyone's lives. You probably see it in people's faces every week. Um, what has working in this industry taught you about relationships and just life in general?
Yeah, so don't take tomorrow for granted, because you can walk out the door and you can be gone, because I see it every day, from accidents, tragedy, that you hug your kid, and then he falls asleep at the wheel, and dies, and that's it. So, and cherish the moments, cherish your relationships. If you haven't talked to your family in a while, I mean, there's a lot of disagreements that happen with family. Go ahead and reconcile that relationship, because you're probably going to regret it when they're no longer here. Life is short. It's a vapor, like they talk about in the Bible. Here today, gone tomorrow. So cherish every moment you have. Hug your family, hug your kids, and don't take life for granted.
And there probably been times where you see like one member of your family that of that family that comes in for the first time, hasn't spoken to anyone for 20, 30 years, and they come to that service. I bet you've seen that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. No, we see that. I mean, there's times I have to play referee and throw the yellow flag because they're fighting
Really?
at arrangements. Oh yeah, I mean, I've had to break up fights. I've had to step out of the arrangement conference. I get sometimes people that say, "Hey, this person isn't allowed to calling hours." I've had to rent cops. I've had to have my security team here. Yeah, it can get heated at times, for sure.
Yeah, you cannot ignore that. That could very well happen. So, Dan, you got one. Your first funeral home you purchased a couple years ago. Have you thought about expanding, purchasing
Yeah.
another one? What are your future
Yeah.
plans?
Yeah. So I do. I try to expand. I've got some feelers out because, like I said, this is about numbers as far as surviving the next 10, 15 years. So if something did come available in the future, I'd certainly entertain it. If you're complacent and just kind of sit back and relax, and things are going good, that's when um, someone can overtake you. So I'm always looking for new innovative ideas, looking to grow.
Stark Family Funeral, Stark Memorial. Can you tell us where's the location? I know we have listeners all over the place,
Yeah,
but tell us the
yeah.
exact location again.
Yeah, so it's in Salem, Ohio. It's between Pittsburgh and Cleveland area, Northeast Ohio. About an hour, 15 minutes from Cleveland, an hour or so from Pittsburgh. So it's rural area, great little town. So that's where we're at.
Which is near Youngstown, which everyone
That's right. Yeah,
knows. It's a medium big college.
yeah,
Would you say they're
yeah,
in?
yeah. I would say, yeah.
Right. No, no, this is very interesting, Dan. It's funny because I just watched a documentary this past weekend called Welcome to Wrexham. It's his Ryan Reynolds, the actor. He bought this club in over there, like overseas in Wales, called Wrexham, and he was talking about they kept repeating it, like this club is surrounded by the community, and I kind of felt the same way for your town. It's all community. Everyone knows each
Hmm.
other. Everyone knows Dan, so it's very community based,
Yeah,
and helping
absolutely.
each other's out. So that's something that I really get from this vibe and everything else. I'm from big town Miami, so it's there's
Yeah,
small pockets, but
exactly.
you know how big community is.
Yep.
Which how important has the community been to the funeral home?
Oh, huge. They welcomed me with open arms because the previous owner had been here for like 60 years. So it was a little scary coming into a new town, but everyone has been very supportive of Stark Memorial and me and my family here. So community is very important.
That's awesome. Dan, what is the best way to reach you about your funeral home, also your TikToks and all
Yeah.
that jazz?
Yeah, so you could find Stark Memorial on Facebook, Stark Memorial Funeral Home and Crematory. You can find me on Instagram, Dan the Funeral Man, and as well as TikTok, Dan the Funeral Man rather. So give me a follow.
Also go to starkmemorial.com, great
Yep.
website. Everything's there and check him out. Dan, also very reachable on Facebook. If you have any
Hmm.
questions about, hey, Dan, I actually am thinking about starting a funeral home or buying one,
Yeah.
Dan give you some suggestions.
Yeah.
He's been through all that. So he can tell you
Absolutely.
where to go and not to go and who to go.
Yeah.
And Dan, how many wins will the Cleveland Browns have this upcoming season for 2025?
Yeah, the first 5 games were brutal. If they can get past 500 on that, I think it's possible to win 9 games. So
That's pretty
we'll
good.
see.
That's
Yeah.
pretty good. 9 is still a winning record, right? It was
Yeah.
17
Yes. Yeah.
games. I'm a sports guy. I don't
Yeah.
have that down yet, but and will the Guardians be back to the Cleveland Indians?
I think so. Yeah, we're working on it. We'll see, but yeah, it'll be interesting. The president's talking about it, so I don't know. I'd like it. I saved my Chief Wahoo hat, so I still call them the Indians. So in my book, they're still the Indians.
I think they're one of the first baseball teams, I believe,
One,
in
yeah,
major
one of them.
baseball.
Yeah, they're turning around. They had a rough beginning of the year, but they had a 10-game losing streak. Now they've won most of their games here recently. So hopefully, they'll second half of the year they'll get back in the playoff hunt.
That's the best part about Cleveland. They show up, even if they're losing, they'll show up
That's
and
it.
support.
That's it.
So, Cavs, Guardians, and of course the Browns. And you guys do have a hockey team, which I don't hear much about them, but
Yeah, I'm
um,
not much into hockey, so.
they're yeah. Well, Dan,
Yep.
great podcast
Yep.
and great to know
Thanks
about
for
this
having
industry.
me.
First time ever. I love these interviews because it's just unique.
Yep.
Anyways, I appreciate you coming on to the Sleon Productions podcast.